Hey, happy Friday. Welcome back to another Friday Tech Workshop. I'm Joseph, a senior developer advocate with AppSmith, and this week we're going to check out Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. This is an AI technique to enhance the results by providing some extra information with the prompt, like a PDF, an image, or even just searching the web or giving it a specific URL to reference. So this is different than training a model because that's done before the prompt. Ahead of time, you would train a model on a large data set and run that fine-tuning job, wait for that to finish, and then your model would be upgraded with that knowledge. This is different because we're using the base model. We're not training anything new. We're just going to use the model as it is, but then enable it to access those extra references in real time. So as soon as you send in that prompt, right then it's going to search the web or reference a PDF file. So a little different than training a model. It's a little less work. Not quite as expensive, it takes time to train the models and all of the tokens to upload. So in this case, you can just give it that extra context right there at the time of the prompt. It improves the results and it's a lot less work than training a model. So we're going to check out 3 different ways to use RAG in AppSmith. First, we'll be using AppSmith's built-in AppSmith AI and analyzing a PDF of an employee handbook. This will enable you to build apps where the user can chat with the PDF and ask questions like, what's the leave policy, or how often do we have reviews? So next we'll look at OpenAI's chat API, and we'll be using Retrieval Augmented Generation with an image URL. So you could pass in the URL of an image that was submitted in a post or maybe with a support ticket, extract data from it, apply tags, and just use that to categorize the image without a human having to look at it first. So that could apply a couple extra data points and then send it off for review. And then lastly, we'll be looking at Retrieval Augmented Generation using Cohere AI and their chat endpoint, which has a web search functionality. This will enable the AI to just search the web as a whole at the time of your request, or you can ground the results to a specific URL. So it still has that web search capability, but you can lock it down and say only reference this one site, like your company's docs, or get an employee handbook. It could be anything online that's public, so you can just give it the URL and it will scrape that and answer based on that data. So let's get started. First, we'll check out Retrieval Augmented Generation using AppSmith AI and a PDF file reference. Okay, first we're going to check out Retrieval Augmented Generation using the built-in AppSmith AI. And I am using this PDF of an employee handbook. This is just like a default, like a template for an employee handbook. And so we can ask it some questions about this document. I have already downloaded this PDF and then uploaded it to this particular data source. So I'll show how to do that in a minute. But first, I just want to show you how this works. So I've put in a prompt here and it's given me a response about the leave policy and it's quoting straight from that document. Going to ask it here about the retirement plan. And so the AI is going to still use that base model, but then reference that specific document so that the response is grounded to that source data. And so now it's telling me about the retirement plan for this company, and it's referencing straight from that PDF. Now, again, this is different than training a model because that's done before the prompt and it's a fine-tuning job that you run on a larger data set of a bunch of examples. We're just giving it a extra file to reference in real time. As soon as that prompt is sent, it's going to look at it at that point instead of training ahead of time like you would train a model. So let's check out how this works. First, what I'm going to do is create a new page, and then we will add an AppSmith AI data source. So starting a new blank page here, go to data, and then you want to create a new data source from the plus here and go to AppSmith AI. All right, and then you'll name the data source and upload any extra files that you want to include. So the files that you add here, they're available anytime you use this data source, any query throughout the app and different pages of the app, but the end user isn't able to access these files and they're not uploading the files directly. So this is something that you as the app developer set up. You decide that I want it to reference these files every time. There's another way that the end user can supply a specific file for that one prompt. So that's a little different. What we're looking at here is a use case where you want it to always respond based on one or two documents based on your employee handbook or company policies or whatever it is. So I'm going to cancel out instead of saving this one because I already have a data source created and I've got that file uploaded already. So if I go to create a new query, you'll see that AI data source, and you can create yours, name it, whatever, upload whatever files you want. And so now that that data source is created, there's lots of different methods here or actions for what the AI can do. What I want to do is generate some text based on that reference file. So if you look at the use context from files option here, you'll see a drop down with any files that you've added to that data source. So I'm going to select this one and we will call this handbook query. So now we get something on the UI here. We'll add a input for the user to ask their prompt. We will have a send button. And then lastly, we'll just use a text input to show the response. And so I'm going to make this one a fixed height with scroll. And then we can display that AI response here. This one will be our prompt. And I'm going to make this a multi-line. And also turn off auto height here. Okay, so that's all we need for components. We could tweak it for looks, but this is UI-wise, that's all we actually need here. So then we'll have a prompt here to ask a question. I've already uploaded the employee handbook, so I'm going to enter a question here. And then just leave that for a second. We're not going to do anything with it yet. So I just want to have some text in there. And then we can come back here to the prompt. And so if you use the mustache syntax like that, you can reference input one. And so if we look at input one.text, now you can see it's passing in that text to the AI. I'm just going to add a little bit before this so that the AI knows what's going on here, why we're referencing this file and what the goal is. So help. Okay, so we'll just let the AI know that, hey, you're talking to employees and you're helping them answer questions from this handbook. And then it'll insert their question. So this is ready to run. We're go ahead and test this out. And then once there's a response here, then we can bind that to that text widget and actually display it on the UI. So give it just another second here. So we've got a response. There it is. You can see this is a object with a response property, and then there's the text of the response. So we'll go back to the UI here and just change this binding to look at that query. So there's the handbook query.data, and then inside of there we have to go to the response. And so there's the text. I'm going to make this a little smaller and turn off the bold. But now we should be able to chat from the UI. I just have to connect this submit button. That's the last piece here. So for the on click, we'll set this to run that query. And now I should be able to ask about retirement again. And so you can see it's pulling directly from that PDF. If I remove that file from the data source here for its context, it's probably just going to hallucinate or guess and make something up. So you can see that it's grounding the response to a specific source from your company's data. So that's the first example with Retrieval Augmented Generation using a PDF file. Next, let's check out how to use OpenAI's chat assistant, and we're going to pass it a image URL. All right, now in this one, I have a second input for an image URL. So I'm going to ask it to tell me about this image and then provide it a URL. I'm just going to grab this icon up here. I'll copy that address And so this is using OpenAI's chat API with an extra option that allows you to include a image URL. And I went with the A logo instead of the full word AppSmith, although it seems like the AI recognized it and was able to describe that for us here. So we're going to build this one from scratch, and I'm going to start over copying my first one that we just did. So I can reuse this part of the layout. I'm just going to duplicate this page, own it here. And so this input, we're going to end up having two inputs. And so I want to name them now instead of just having input one. So this will be the input for the prompt. And I'm going to add one more for that URL. Okay. And I'll name this one URL, image URL. There we go. Now for the query, here we were using this AppSmith AI query. I'm going to delete this, and we're importing a new query now. We're going to use the OpenAI docs here. And if you check out the examples, you can change this to curl. And so what we want to do is using the chat endpoint to create a chat completion. And if you go to the image input tab here, you'll see that you still have a messages array. So even if the input is an image, you would have an array of messages with the role of user and then whatever your content is. But then you've also got this extra thing in here where instead of type text, you got type image URL, and then you have the image URL property, which then is another object and then has a URL. So it's a little nested and repetitive there. But what I'm going to do is copy this curl request, come back here to AppSmith, and we will import that curl. And then you'll see your API token right here, the text string that we want to make dynamic, and the image URL. So I'm going to just import it like this. And now that we have it in here, we'll go to the dashboard, grab an API key here. So we'll create a new key. All right, I'm going to copy this key and paste it in place here. So this should run. It's not dynamic yet. It's going to use this text, but let's go ahead and test it. Make sure we get back a response. All right. So there's the assistance response, and it has described that image. So that much is working. So next, what we can do is tie in that input. There's a couple ways to do this. You can either use mustache syntax inside of a regular JSON object here, and then reference input one. But what I prefer to do is put those curly braces around everything. And then I only need one set, and I can use that in multiple places throughout here. So then right here, we will reference input, not input one anymore, but input for the prompt. And then this one for the URL, that's coming from our input URL.text. So we're passing in those two values, and I've already swapped out the API key there. So then the last thing is just to wire up this API, because we had AppSmith AI before, and now we're calling a different AI. We'll go back to our button here and change this to execute the send message query. And then we want to display the results here. And that's a little different format as well. So our send message query.data, that has a choices array in it. And inside that array, you want to get the first record, and then message, which is an object that has content. That's an object. Is it? Nope, that's the string finally. Okay. So it's in there. It's a little nested. But all APIs will have a .data. This one has a choices array, and then you want to go to the first record message content. So let's test it out now. Let's grab a different image. I'm going to go to the AppSmith homepage here. And let's see, where's copy image address? Let's see if this one works. All right. This is a WebP format. Um, it should still work. We'll see what happens. Oh, it failed. Okay. Oh, I think it just ran, it probably just timed out. Um, settings, the default is 10 seconds. We'll make it 30. Okay, one more time. Let's see if it can tell us what this image is. All right. Code snippet in JavaScript. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's got a detailed breakdown of every like component of that async function and the name of the function and everything. So this is retrieval augmented generation using an image URL. So it's not an image that you are uploading from your device. It's one that's already online. It could also be like a signed URL from an S3 bucket so that it's still secure to send in that link and the AI would be able to access it and then the link would expire. So this could be leveraged for lots of different use cases to auto tag an image or categorize or whatever. So lastly, we're going to check out Cohere AI and their web search functionality, which will enable it to just search the web as a whole. It can go out and find whatever info and respond in real time with that. So we'll switch over to Cohere AI now. All right, lastly, we're going to check out Cohere AI. Now, this is their API playground, and it's pretty cool because it helps you learn how all the different options work, and then you can look at the request under the hood and see exactly what the API call would look like when you have those particular tools enabled. So I'm going to turn off the tools here. We're not using anything extra, just the base model, and say, tell me about AppSmith. And so it knows some, it's going to already have some in its training data set. But then if you ask it some real specific stuff, it might not get everything like what are the hosting options? And so it comes up with something that's kind of close, it may have referenced our docs at one point, but it's not really structured in the exact way that we list them. You can tell it didn't reference our site. And so if you turn on the tools here, there's the internet search option, and you can also actually ground it to a specific URL. I think that is in the connector here. Yeah, so there's the web search and then grounding for a specific URL. And so I'm going to take our docs and go to the self-hosting section here. I think this should work. So we'll grab this page URL. And this time we want to ground the responses to only this URL. And so if I ask that same question again, all right. And you can see it's even formatted a little differently. It's almost like it's more sure of the options or something. And it's got references here showing where it got the citation for each one of these from the main doc. So this is going to allow you to ground those responses and make sure it's only referencing data from that particular domain. Then if you go to the under the hood section here, this is pretty cool. I like how they've set up their API. The copy button here for each one of these requests. Let's see, conversation turn with connectors. Yep, and then there's a regular one. So it'll show their response and then yours. And then I had one with the connector turned on here. And so here is this connectors array. And you can copy this as a curl and then import it just like I did with the last one. We're going to skip past that and actually go to enabling the web search since we just imported a curl and I already showed how to do that. All right, so I've got an API here set up with Cohere, and I have the web search already enabled. So I've asked it to tell me about AppSmith, and it is using the web search, but it's not grounded to a specific domain yet. Okay, we'll just paste this in here, and I'm using the URL from our global functions this time. I want to get the list of global functions here and ask about that. So we'll go back to the UI. And I'm going to ask it, what are the global functions in AppSmith? Although first, I think I want to do it without the grounding to that one URL just to see the difference. So we'll go back here to the body. We're going to do the web search, but without giving it the exact URL. So let's see what kind of results we get first, and then add the grounding for that one page from the docs. Right, so this is without the grounding, and global functions, open a modal, close. Yeah, that's a decent list. I don't think it's quite all of them. All right, so back here, we're going to paste this back in, and now it's grounding it to this one site, listing all of them. And so we'll just run that exact same query again. All right, and there it is. You can see it's using the actual names of the functions now and using the parentheses. It didn't list quite as many for some reason, but it's definitely referencing the doc, whereas the first time it was more just paragraphs of it, and this is like a bulleted list of here's a function's name and what it does. So you can tell that it's grounding to that specific site. So this is Retrieval Augmented Generation using Cohere's AI to ground the results to a specific URL. We also saw how to use a image URL with OpenAI's Chat AI. And then with AppSmith AI, we used Retrieval Augmented Generation to reference a PDF file and allow you to chat with that PDF. So I think that's everything I want to cover for this week. If you have any questions on this one or ideas for future workshops, feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.